Before he became one of the gridiron greats and a star of the silver screen, Jim Brown was a force of nature in the making. Born in a small Georgia town and raised partly on Long Island, his early life was shaped by hardship, talent, and determination. Long before his record-breaking football career with the Cleveland Browns, he dominated nearly every sport he touched, from lacrosse to track. This episode of More Than Just a Score explores the roots of Jim Brown's greatness, showing how his childhood athletic brilliance and fierce competitive drive helped build one of the most iconic and influential figures in football history. His rise began long before the spotlight found him, though. James Nathaniel Brown was born February 17, 1936 on St. Simons Island, Georgia. It's a quiet coastal community far removed from the stadium roar that would one day follow him. His father, Swinton Town, was a boxer, and his mother, Teresa, left Georgia for work in New York. For much of his early childhood, Brown was raised by his great-grandmother, learning early on that stability was far from guaranteed and that toughness was not something that you talked about so much as something that you lived. When Brown was just 8 years old, he joined his mother in Manhasset on Long Island. The move changed the geography of his life, but not the edge in him. In New York, sports became both refuge and a proving ground. At Manhasset High School, he seemed to excel at nearly everything he touched. He starred in football, baseball, basketball, lacrosse, and track, piling up 13 varsity letters and earning repeated all-star recognition. He was not simply a good athlete. He was the sort of guy who would stand out above the crowd on every field. He had a command that one couldn't help but notice. Now, what made Brown different even then wasn't just raw ability, although he had plenty of that. He could overpower opponents, outrun them, and outthink them. In an era when many young athletes were told to specialize, Brown looked as if he had been built to challenge in any sport he wanted to, and colleges noticed. By the time his high school career ended, scholarship offers arrived in waves. He weighed his options and chose Syracuse University. At the 'Cuse, his legend only deepened. He lettered in 4 sports: football, basketball, lacrosse, and track and field. That alone would have been remarkable, but he kept pushing the standard higher. He became an All-American in football and lacrosse, showing that his greatness was never confined to a single game. On the football field, he ran with the same violence and grace that would later define his professional career. Now, as for lacrosse, he also became one of that sport's most celebrated players. Brown didn't just play the game, he was transforming it. Where lacrosse prized finesse, timing, and creativity, Brown brought an overwhelming combination of speed, strength, and instinct that few had ever seen. For those who are unfamiliar with lacrosse, it has deep roots in North America's indigenous communities, but by the time Jim Brown arrived at Syracuse, it had developed into a fast, strategic collegiate game. Yet even within that evolving landscape, Brown, like in so many of his athletic endeavors, stood apart. Coaches and teammates quickly realized they weren't just watching a talented player, they were watching someone capable of bending the game to his will. Brown played attack, a position that required both scoring ability and field awareness. What made him special was how effortlessly he blended the two. He could overpower defenders physically, but also glide past them with speed, or just simply outmaneuver them with sharp decision-making. His presence forced opposing teams to rethink their entire defensive approach. According to Syracuse Athletics records, Brown earned first-team All-American honors in 1957, cementing his place among the elite players in the sport. Teammates often spoke about the fear he inspired in opponents. Brown's style was aggressive but still controlled, combining his athleticism with a deep understanding of positioning. He didn't just score goals, he dictated the pace and rhythm of the game. His versatility also stood out. Despite his extraordinary impact, Brown's lacrosse career has understandably been overshadowed by his legendary football achievements. However, within the lacrosse community, his influence has endured. During his 3 seasons at Syracuse, Brown scored 77 goals and added 21 assists. He is still considered to be one of the greatest to ever pick up a stick and was inducted into the National Lacrosse Hall of Fame in 1983. His induction acknowledged not just his statistics, but the way he elevated the visibility and perception of lacrosse during a critical period of its growth. His legacy also carries cultural significance as a black athlete excelling in a sport that, at the time, was anything but diverse. He challenged assumptions and expanded the boundaries of who could thrive in the game. His success helped open doors for future generations of athletes, contributing to the sport's gradual evolution into a more inclusive space. Jim Brown's lacrosse career is more than just a footnote. It is a testament to his all-round greatness. On the Syracuse fields, before packed football stadiums knew his name, Brown was reshaping what athletic excellence meant. Lacrosse, and Jim Brown's place in it, set a foundation for future multi-sport stars. It's where a once-in-a-generation athlete proved that greatness doesn't just belong to one sport. His legacy has provided inspiration for other generational talents like Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders to emerge and take ownership of more than just one arena. After leaving college, Jim Brown had a decision to make. Not only had he forged a Hall of Fame caliber career in lacrosse and starred in track and field, his exploits on the football field and basketball court brought him to a crossroads. He was drafted by the NBA's Syracuse Nationals and also by the NFL's Cleveland Browns. He made the move to Northeast Ohio, and his arrival in the National Football League was nothing short of spectacular. He wasted no time establishing himself as the most dominant running back in the game. In his rookie season, he led the league in rushing yards and earned Rookie of the Year honors. Even in those early days, he was rewriting what greatness looked like at his position. Brown's style was both simple and overwhelming. He ran with a rare combination of power, speed, and balance. He'd often drag defenders with him rather than avoiding contact. At a time when many running backs relied on finesse, Brown imposed his will. Over the course of his 9-year career, he used brute force to create a tapestry of dominance that led the NFL in rushing 8 times. It's an extraordinary feat that speaks to both his talent and his consistency. By the early 1960s, Brown had become the centerpiece of the Cleveland offense. Every opponent knew the ball was coming his way, but few had any idea how to stop the runaway freight train. His ability to control the tempo of a game made him invaluable. Whether grinding out tough yards or breaking long runs, Brown dictated how the game was played. His presence alone forced defenses to adjust, and even when they did, it more often than not was to no avail. The defining moment of Brown's career came in 1964 when he helped lead the Browns to the NFL championship. Facing the heavily favored Baltimore Colts, Cleveland delivered a commanding performance, winning 27-0.
Collins flank to the right, Green again, wing back to the left. Flip to Jim Brown, turning left end. He's to the 40, 45, 50, 45, 40. Jim Brown to the 30. He's to the 20. Jim Brown is down on the 17-yard line.
Brown rushed for 114 yards in the game, anchoring an offense that dominated from start to finish. It was also the last championship in Brown's franchise history, and Jim Brown's performance remains one of the most iconic in team history. Individually, his accomplishments were staggering. By the time he retired after the 1965 season, he held the NFL record for career rushing yards with 12,312. He also averaged over 100 rushing yards per game, a mark that remains one of the most impressive statistical achievements in league history. Yet, what made Brown unique was not just the numbers, it was how he accumulated them. He played with a physicality and authority that set a new standard for the running back position. Football lore has it that Jim Brown, in more than 2,300 career carries, was never tackled for a loss. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Brown's career was how it ended. At just 30 years old, still at the peak of his abilities, he chose to walk away. His decision shocked the football world, but it also cemented his legacy in a different way. Brown walked away not because he had to, but because he chose to, leaving behind a career that felt both complete and unfinished at the same time. More on the events leading up to his retirement in a moment. Beyond his on-field dominance, Brown's legacy extends into the cultural fabric of the NFL. He became a powerful voice during the civil rights movement, using his platform to advocate for equality and justice. In doing so, he helped redefine what it meant to be a professional athlete, showing that influence could extend far beyond the boundaries of the game. In the years that followed, generations of running backs would be measured against the standard that Brown set. Players like Walter Payton, Emmitt Smith, and Barry Sanders each brought their own style to the position, but all operated in the shadow of Brown's influence. He was not just a great player, he was the prototype. In fact, Barry Sanders, who has a case to be known as the GOAT of running backs, wouldn't get that endorsement from even his own father.
First, I want to say hello to the greatest running back that ever lived, the number one running back who ever lived. He's not with us today. I think he's with his family in Los Angeles, Mr. Jim Brown. So I want to say hello to him. Yeah.
Today, Jim Brown is widely regarded as one of the greatest players in NFL history. His career with the Cleveland Browns remains the benchmark for excellence, and his impact on the game continues to be felt. The statistics tell part of the story, but they can't fully capture the force he was every time he touched the football. His influence is still discussed in coaching rooms, the broadcast booth, and locker rooms across the league. Young players still study his film, learning how he combined vision, patience, and physical strength into a complete skill set. Coaches often point to Brown as the standard when teaching fundamentals of the running back position, from ball security to reading blocks. Even decades after his retirement, his presence can be felt every time a running back lowers his shoulder or explodes through a defensive line. Brown's legacy is still tied heavily to the identity of the Cleveland Browns franchise. In a city that has endured its share of sports heartbreak, his career remains a shining moment of sustained excellence. Fans still speak of his dominance with reverence, and his achievements continue to define what success looks like in the land. Statues, honors, and tributes ensure that his name remains a part of the city's sporting fabric. Ultimately, Jim Brown's career is not just a chapter in NFL history, it's one of its foundations. He redefined what a running back could be, elevated the expectations of greatness, and left behind a legacy that continues to influence the game at every level. His story is one of power, purpose, and lasting impact, a reminder that some players do more than just succeed, they change the game forever. There was also a social reality beneath the triumph. Brown's rise came during a period where opportunities for black athletes were expanding, but never evenly and never without friction. His success was earned in environments that could celebrate his talent while still limiting his freedom. While Jim Brown is often remembered for his dominance on the football field, his impact off of it may be just as significant, if not more. After establishing himself as one of the greatest players in National Football League history, Brown used his platform to become a powerful voice in the fight for civil rights and social justice during one of the most turbulent periods in American history. In the 1960s, as the civil rights movement was gaining momentum, Brown emerged as more than an athlete. He became an activist. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he refused to separate sports from the social realities facing black Americans. He believed that his success came with responsibility, and he was determined to use his visibility to push for meaningful change. One of the most defining moments of Brown's activist life came in 1967 when he helped organize and participated in what became known as the Cleveland Summit. It was held in support of Muhammad Ali, who had refused induction into the U.S. military during the Vietnam War. The meeting brought together some of the most prominent black athletes of the era. Figures like Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar gathered to publicly support Ali's stance. Brown was a central figure in organizing the event. The Cleveland Summit created a powerful image of unity and resistance that resonated well beyond the sports world. Brown's activism wasn't limited to symbolic gestures either. He worked directly in the community to create opportunities for economic advancement. In 1966, he founded the Negro Industrial Economic Union, an organization aimed at helping black-owned businesses to grow and thrive. The initiative focused on providing financial support, mentorship, and resources to entrepreneurs. reflecting Brown's belief that economic empowerment was a critical component of true equality. At a time when many athletes were encouraged to remain silent on political issues, Brown chose a different path. He spoke openly about racial injustice, inequality, and the need for systemic change. His willingness to challenge the status quo set him apart and, at times, made him a controversial figure, yet it also helped pave the way for future generations of athletes to use their voices in similar ways. Brown's activism also intersected with his decision to retire from football at the height of his career. While his departure was influenced by multiple factors, it allowed him to focus more fully on his work outside the game. He became involved in film and media, further expanding his influence, but never lost sight of his commitment to social change. Over time, Brown's role in the civil rights movement has come to be recognized as a vital part of his legacy. He demonstrated that athletes could be more than just entertainers. They could be leaders, advocates, and agents of change. His actions helped redefine the relationship between sports and society, showing that the two are often deeply intertwined. Today, Jim Brown is remembered almost as much for being a pioneer athlete activist as being a football legend. His courage to speak out during a critical moment in history continues to inspire modern athletes to use their platforms to address issues of injustice. From the fields of Cleveland to the front lines of social change, Brown's legacy is one of strength, conviction, and purpose. Earlier in this episode, I alluded to Brown's abrupt retirement from the NFL following the 1965 season. His interests away from the game were increasingly intersecting and perhaps conflicting with life on the field. This came to a head in the lead-up to the 1966 season. Not only had Jim Brown taken center stage as one of football's greatest performers, he also had a burgeoning career performing on the big screen as a Hollywood actor. Production schedules for Brown in the filming of the Dirty Dozen meant that he would not be in Cleveland in time for training camp leading up to the 1966 season. This didn't sit well with then Browns owner Art Modell, who threatened to fine Brown for every day of camp that he missed. This led to a contentious standoff that culminated in Brown walking away from the game altogether while arguably still being in his prime. While many athletes struggled to transition to life beyond sports, Brown approached film and media with the same intensity that had defined his career on the field. His move into acting in the late 1960s marked the beginning of a new chapter and expanded his influence. His entry into film came at a time when opportunities for black actors were limited and often constrained by stereotypes. Refusing to accept those limitations, though, he sought roles that projected strength, intelligence, and authority. His appearance in The Dirty Dozen was a springboard from football to films. In that movie, he shared the screen with established stars and proved he could hold his own in a major Hollywood production. Throughout the late 60s and 70s, Brown became a recognizable presence in action films. Movies like 100 Rifles and Slaughter helped establish him as a leading figure in a new wave of cinema that featured black protagonists in powerful roles. In 100 Rifles, Brown starred alongside Raquel Welch, and the film became notable not only for its action, but also for its groundbreaking interracial on-screen relationship. His film persona mirrored his athletic identity. He played characters who were physically imposing, self-assured, and unafraid to challenge authority. These roles resonated with audiences and contributed to a broader cultural shift in how black heroes were portrayed in mainstream media. He became part of the early foundation of what would later be known as the blaxploitation era. Beyond acting, Brown also took an interest in production and storytelling. He understood that true influence in media came not just from appearing on screen, but from shaping the narratives behind the scenes. The perspectives aligned with his broader commitment to empowerment and representation as he sought to create opportunities for others within the industry. Brown's film career also intersected with his activism. He often chose roles that reflected themes of resistance, independence, and justice, reinforcing the message that he had long championed off the field. In doing so, he blurred the line between entertainment and social commentary, using film as another platform to express his views and challenge societal norms. Despite never achieving the same level of acclaim in Hollywood as he did in football, his impact on film and other media was nevertheless significant. He helped open doors for future generations of black actors by demonstrating that they could lead major productions and command audience attention. His presence in Hollywood during a transformative era contributed to the gradual diversification of roles and stories in American cinema. Over time, Brown's legacy in media has come to be appreciated as an extension of his larger influence. Just as he redefined the running back position in football, he helped reshape expectations for athletes entering entertainment. While Jim Brown's legacy on the field, on screen, and as an activist is often defined by greatness, his life and legacy is also complicated. As one of the most prominent athletes of his era, Brown lived much of his life under intense scrutiny, and his actions, both positive and negative, were magnified. Over the course of his life, he faced a series of legal issues. Some of these incidents involved allegations of assault, many of which drew significant media attention. And while most cases were either dropped or resulted in not guilty verdicts, they did contribute to a growing perception that Brown's life away from the spotlight was more turbulent. One of the earliest widely reported incidents occurred in 1968, when Brown was charged with assault with intent to commit murder following an altercation. He was ultimately acquitted, but the case marked the beginning of a pattern of legal challenges that would follow him for years. These incidents often placed Brown at the center of public debate, as fans and critics alike struggled to reconcile his achievements with his personal conduct. Throughout the 1970s and beyond, he also faced additional accusations involving violence against women. Most cases were dismissed or settled out of court. These situations sparked criticism, though, and raised concerns about behavior that stood in contrast to his role as a public figure and activist. The complexity of the events has made them a difficult but essential part of understanding Brown's full legacy. He himself often pushed back against public perception and the way he was portrayed in the media. He felt that the image created of him was over the top and misguided. The tension, though, between Brown's achievements and the controversy that occasionally followed him reflects a broader truth about public figures. Greatness on a field or a screen still can't erase human failings. Brown's life serves as an example of how complex and multifaceted a legacy can be. His contributions to football, civil rights, and culture remain paramount, but they also must exist alongside actions that have been widely criticized. In later years, though, Brown continued to engage with the public through community programs and advocacy work. He believed that the road to equality was found through economic empowerment and not protest movements. He founded initiatives aimed at reducing gang violence and supporting at-risk youth, demonstrating an ongoing commitment to social issues. These efforts added another layer to his legacy, suggesting a desire to create positive change despite issues that followed him. Today, discussions about Jim Brown mostly center on his extraordinary accomplishments on the football field that landed the 3-time MVP and 9-time Pro Bowler in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1971, as well as being a trailblazer in Hollywood. But his story isn't a simple one. It's a narrative that includes triumph and influence, but also conflict. We hope that you've enjoyed this glimpse into the life and work of Jim Brown, a man whose impact extended far beyond the football field. A human being who was flawed despite possessing immense talent and a desire to build stronger people and communities. If you enjoyed this story, help us out by hitting the like and subscribe button. And if you have any stories that you'd like to hear us dig deeper into, feel free to drop them in the comments and join us next time when we look for more than just a score.